Mr. Shimkus from Illinois. Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A national missile defense. I am aghast at it being dropped by this administration. First of all, we have a missile defense program, and that protects the West Coast against a launch by a rogue nation, namely North Korea. The National Missile Defense Site proposed plan for Europe was designed primarily to defend our eastern coast against a rogue attack by Iran. So that's why I reject the arguments by this administration. This administration citing concerns into Europe. The benefit of the national was that we got a twofer from this. Not only did we get a system, again, a system that's already in application on the western coast, we have a system in place to protect our eastern seaboard from a launch of an intercontinental ballistic missile armed with a nuclear warhead by Iran against our eastern coast. But it also gives coverage to our allies and friends in the vast majority of Europe. Our allies, the Poles and the Czechs, worked hard to educate their public, bring together consensus, and support the two sites, one being a radar site in the Czech Republic, and the other one being an interceptor site in Poland. And what do they do based upon the negotiations with us? What is our response to them? Our response to them is to now reject and turn away from this site. Now, the launch sites in Poland are a few interceptors, not the hundreds of offensive missiles that are placed in Russia. The interceptors were never a threat to Russia. However, this administration now bows to the totalitarian regime in Russia, and at the rejection of our friends and allies in the democratic countries in Eastern Europe. Our friends, the Poles and the Czechs, who have worked hard, who have solid democratic institutions, support the war on terror, are an allies in the battles of freedom. So we side with the Russians in opposition to our Eastern European friends and neighbors. You know, Russia may have been successful in causing this administration to back away from its commitment, but I want them to understand that there are still many, many members in this chamber who will not kowtow and bow to the threats imposed by a re-emergent Russia. Russia has meddled in the affairs of the Eastern European countries for long enough, most recently in the invasion of Georgia, meddling in the Ukraine, and trying to destabilize their neighbors on the borders. We will continue to fight for those freedom-loving democratic institutions in Eastern Europe, especially those countries that, as I mentioned before, the Ukraine and Georgia, the people who want democracy in Belarus. We will not allow a re-emergent Russia to try to build a new sphere of influence that will deprive these people of freedom. This battle on national missile defense is the first victory for Russia in again attacking the credibility of the leadership of our country and causing us to back down to commitments we made not only to our citizens on the eastern coast, but also our allies and friends in Europe as a whole, and particularly the Eastern European countries. The Eastern European countries for years have been called the captive nations because these were the countries that were under the totalitarian regime, under the old Soviet Socialist Republic system, and had been deprived of their freedoms for decades. And of course, that is the desire of this new emergent Russia, is to bring them back into that sphere. It's disappointing that this administration didn't stand strong in support of freedom and democracy to keep the movement on the national missile defense forward. And we look forward to continuing this debate. And I just want a message to our friends in Europe that you will not be forgotten. I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank the gentleman.